Imagine standing in a sprawling, modern metropolis filled with towering skyscrapers. Vast 8-lane boulevards stretch out in front of you, but there isn't a single car in sight anywhere. This was exactly the scene in Kangbashi, a brand new district in the city of Ordos. Back in the early 2010s, massive civic monuments and gleaming residential towers sat completely vacant. Western news crews arrived and broadcast a very specific narrative to the world. These were doomed monuments to runaway real estate speculation, constructed by central planners for a population that didn't exist. The evidence seemed ironclad when commercial satellite imagery went viral. By plunging down from orbit, viewers could clearly see perfectly gridded, highly developed urban sectors with absolutely zero signs of human life. But building at this scale before a single resident arrives is a specific sequence of engineering. A satellite image taken during this window captures a snapshot of a process rather than a final result. To understand why these silent cities were built, we have to rewind to 1978. Following Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms, China kicked off the largest mass migration in human history. At the time, existing city centers were already bursting at the seams. Ancient streets choked with bicycles, and dense alleyways simply could not handle any more growth. Yet, over the next 4 decades, more than 500 million rural citizens packed up and moved into urban centers to fill factory and service jobs. Local mayors faced a brutal mathematical reality. They had an ultimatum: rapidly expand municipal borders outward into massive new districts immediately, or suffer total infrastructure collapse. To absorb a demographic wave roughly the size of the entire European Union, planners realized they had to engineer and construct cities in a completely reversed sequence. In a typical Western city, growth happens incrementally. People settle, traffic gets terrible, and then the city spends years tearing up roads to lay new water mains. China adopted a strategy of preemptive urbanization. They carved deep underground to install integrated utility tunnels, power grids, and multi-line subway networks long before the first resident ever unlocked their door. The logic comes down to cost. Building elevated rail lines through empty fields is drastically cheaper than tunneling beneath a dense historic city center. By installing this capacity early, planners eliminated decades of future construction delays. But it also required placing an enormous financial gamble on demographic forecasts that might never materialize. Building an entire metropolis from scratch requires immense capital, and since Chinese local governments have heavy spending obligations but keep very little recurring tax revenue, how exactly do they pay for it? Under Chinese law, the state owns all urban land. To bridge their budget gaps, municipalities take rural land on the outskirts, rezone it for commercial use, and sell the long-term leasing rights at massive premiums. Cities couldn't borrow directly, so they created local government financing vehicles. They inject state-owned land into the LGFE as collateral to borrow heavily for infrastructure. Once built, surrounding land values spike. The city auctions these new parcels to developers, using the profits to pay off the initial loans. As long as property values climbed, this self-reinforcing flywheel successfully funded the largest construction boom in global history. It paid for the thicket of cranes that turned those blueprints into physical skylines. If developers were buying up this land and selling out the apartment towers, why were there still no lights on in the windows? In the Chinese real estate market, apartments are almost always sold as Mao Pei Fang, which translates to a raw, rough-cast concrete shell. Buyers receive a unit with exposed structural pillars and absolutely no interiors. After the building is officially handed over, it usually takes individual homeowners anywhere from 12 to 36 months to hire contractors, pour floors, install plumbing, and run electrical wiring before they can actually move in. A satellite orbiting overhead records a structurally finished tower with dark windows. To the sensor, it is a vacant grid. To the homeowner, it's an active, multi-year interior project. To get an accurate headcount, urban data scientists eventually stopped looking at aerial photos and started tracking digital footprints. By combining mobile phone location pings and active smart electricity meters, they mapped the true heartbeat of these districts. Across a 5 to 8 year window, more than half of the surveyed new districts steadily gained residents, maturing from silent construction zones into operational urban subcenters. Even Kangbashi, the poster child for empty cities, is now home to over 120,000 residents. Its civic squares and wide boulevards are lined with lush greenery and heavy daily foot traffic. Ultimately, Ghost City is just a media headline. In urban planning, it simply describes a temporary, expected lag phase in a massive greenfield development. The physical buildings did eventually fill with people, but the financial engine that built them left something else behind. The LGFV machine accumulated over 50 trillion RMB in shadow debt, and that massive financial burden is the true ghost haunting China's economic future.